Hey there, guys. I wanted to showcase a little monitoring demo I cooked up, and I wanted to show this off to the DevOps slash SRE communities so you can actually have your own monitoring stack backends available for you. So I wanted to make this so it was a pretty easy to use, works right out of the box backends that the Grafana Labs people provide, and they have some tutorials, but they don't really have a really good turnkey process to actually get these services up and working in such a way where you can scale them up and down inside of a container environment. They have Kubernetes deployments, but they are pretty hefty and people might be intimidated with Kubernetes. So this is kind of like a pretty easy, if you have Docker working on your own machine, tutorial to get this up and working, and then eventually move on to more production ready Kubernetes deployments or anything of that sort. So first thing that you need to do is you need to clone this repo, which is inside my own personal user Wiko2 and just the monitoring a repo. I've already went ahead and done that. So let's look at over the prerequisites. So we need to make sure that we have Docker, Docker Compose, and Promtail to be available here on our machine. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my networks for Docker. So I'm going to do a Docker network create for Loki. And it helps if I actually spell it right. And same thing with Mimir. All right, so these two things are created, and I'm going to also go ahead and install Promtail. Promtail is a logging transporter service that can work straight on your own machine and has a HTTP backend, HTTP endpoint when it's running, so you can actually see how this is working. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start up our logging backend. So let's go ahead and get inside Loki. And I provided a scaling method already that's part of the Grafana demos to actually, if we want to scale this up to having more write endpoint, write replicas or read replicas, it's already built inside here. So let's go ahead and do our Docker Compose up for our Loki area. So inside that repo, there's actually an Nginx load balancer that actually load balances the request, HTTP request to the reader endpoint for all the read requests and all the write requests to the write endpoints. So that's up and working. If we wanted to see how this is up and available, we just have to go to port 3100 on our own machine. So that's up and working. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start up the prom stream. So let's go ahead and cd into Promtail. There is a positions YAML file inside here. If I wanted to, I could just remove this. What's going to happen is that when I launch this, it's actually going to create the positions file inside this directory, and that's just kind of giving a position of the logs, where exactly in the logs it needs to transport the logs on the containers we're going to be scraping essentially. So if we wanted to start this up, we just need to do promtail config file equals promtail YAML, and it helps if I actually put in a dot instead of that. So that's up and working. If we wanted to see how this is working, we go to 9008. Oh, it doesn't like me because it's actually 980. I need to fix the docs for that. All right. So we have this up and working. It's going to be scraping a Prometheus scraping. It's going to scrape Prometheus in a second, but that's it's up and working at the moment. So let's get up our third available service, which is Mimir, which is the biggest and most heaviest service inside here. So all we're going to do is we're going to do a Docker Compose up, and this is going to be launching a lot of containers because inside this Docker Compose is around, I want to say, looks like it's going to be like 6 or 7 different services. So there's the ingester, distributor, querier, ruler, alert manager, there's a query front end, and there's lots of different services that are available here. It uses the same philosophy and the same structure as Nginx, where it's pushing out all the requests to the right HTTP endpoints inside Mimar. So I've kind of taken that all for you, and if you want to just get this up and working, you have that Nginx config inside that Docker Compose file. So let's just get this up and running. So we're going to do a Docker Compose up, scale the ingester at 3 and the distributor at 2. These are kind of like the minimum requirements that Mimar and the Grafana Labs suggest to use. So we're going to just go ahead and use that. So let's get all the services up and running. And if we wanted to actually look and see where this is, we can go into our local host. Which one was it? It was 9. I don't think it was that. If I look in my docs, 9009. And so what's happening here is that this is actually looking at the ingester endpoint inside our services. So this is hitting one of the 3 ingester containers inside here. And we can actually see that we have the instances available and it's doing what it needs to do. So let's get the next part working, which is Prometheus. So Prometheus is being configured here to just scrape itself and to send the metrics to Mimar. So if we wanted to quickly look at Prometheus, this is just using a demo, and it's actually going to be sending it to Mimar. We're attaching the service to the Mimar network, so it will be able to send its metrics to the Mimar area. So if we do a Docker Compose up, pulls up Prometheus, and it's able to actually send metrics in. So we have our services available, and eventually in the future, I want to get more admin endpoints for all the other services, but this is kind of like a quick demo and I want to get people up and working. So we actually have a few services up and working. If we wanted to look at Prometheus, we want to actually look at our localhost and go to the, well, let's look at the docs. 9.9, perfect. So this is the Prometheus endpoint, and it's going to be sending them to Mimar. So now let's take this one, and we're going to finally launch Grafana. So Grafana is the main front endpoint for all these services, and it's been configured to actually use those services as data sources immediately if we just do Docker Compose up. And this will be available at localhost 3000. Perfect. So what we want to do is we actually want to look at the sources. So let's take a look at what we have. We have 2 data sources. We have the Loki data source that's using the Loki gateway, and it's been configured to use a tenant ID. So we have this Xscope organization ID, and we're sending this a tenant ID of Loki local, or local Loki. Same thing with Mimar. It's the same idea that it's actually using a tenant ID, and it's using the endpoint Prometheus. Now, if we actually wanted to actually see how these services are up, we can actually go ahead and pull up our Loki logs of Prometheus, and we can actually do our query. When we can see that we already have all the Prometheus logs that are inside here available in the explore area. Now, if we want to take this and we want to look for text inside here, like maybe we want to look for a scrape, it will automatically pull it up, which is pretty cool. Now, the next one is Mimar. So if we select Mimar, we actually have our Mimar service, and we actually want to just see if something is up. And since this is only using Prometheus labels, and it's only using Prometheus metrics. We just want to see if it's up, and it is up and working. So this is just a quick little demo to actually get you up and rolling. And I want this to make this pretty easy available. So go ahead and clone this repo, give it a shot, give me your feedback. I want this to be pretty easy for people to use. And I want people to feel like they're not intimidated by metrics or logging backends. You can get this up and running on your own system. You can have tons of information from Grafana. They have tons of documentation on how these services work, so you can actually see and get yourselves into these different services. And one of the best parts is that this is actually scalable. So if we wanted to actually run more read or write nodes, if I wanted to, let's stop Promtail and let's stop Loki. And if I wanted to actually launch more read and write endpoints, all I need to do is to change the scale of the read and write, and we'll launch more of those services. And since I'm stopping these services, you can see that the other services are unaffected because they're not using the same network. They are attached, and since the network is already predefined, it won't actually hurt the other services. So if we wanted to check, this is not up and working, but if I wanted to scale this up to 2 read and 2 write, it will launch, and now we have multiple endpoints available. Make sure that this is up and working. See if send it some more logs. Oh, it was able to send more logs. And let's look at our logs for Prometheus. And if we want to look, run our query, we can see that we have another set of services. We can see that it was killing the previous service. And this is available for you to use. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little demo, and please give me some feedback and let me know how this works for everyone. Thank you very much.